All right, back for more pop art with Walter. What we did is we brought in one of our inspirations, which is this portrait of Mick Jagger by Andy Warhol. And I say just put your inspiration, if you have a couple, just throw them in on as layers. And that way we can turn them on and off to see what we really like about them. One of the things I really like is that the face, the colors, a little bit offset. There are some vector-esque looking shapes here, a little bit of the hairs drawn in. So it's very simple to do, but it kind of pulls you away a little bit from being precise, which I find for me is kind of hard, right? You get to play even more. So let's turn off our inspiration, go back over here, and the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to drag my inspiration up, is pull away from this background because the background's not interesting in the slightest. Now he is kind of, because he's kind of on something, I might keep that and separate the background into one space here and then another space here, and then they could both be very, very, non-committal and not part of the real dynamic color that we're going to put in there. So above the stamp visible layer, we're going to go to Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color. There are a couple reasons for doing it like this. One is that because we want to tile these pictures, this way you can very easily change the color of a fill layer just by double clicking. So I'm going to call this background, and I'm going to just pick an orange for now and hit OK. And then we have this layer mask that comes free with every fill layer. So you'll see this icon here, this first thumbnail says, if I double click on that, I can change the color at any point. So it's very, very simple to do. Now, some people like to get the brush, work with black and white, and kind of find the subject, kind of like hunting, like a Marco Polo. I don't like to work that way. I like to hide the background. So I'm going to select this layer mask thumbnail and either go into my properties for that layer mask and hit invert, or Command I is the shortcut. Okay. So it's a gigantic eyelash. So I'm going to hit X now to put white in the foreground. Sorry, X to put black in the foreground. Get rid of that. And then hit X, which toggles the foreground and the background. And with the white in the foreground, I'm going to start hiding some of this. Now I have a slightly harder brush because I don't want it to look too soft. I like a little more aggressive look. If you want a harder brush, you can go over here to your brush size and hardness. I'm going to take it down just a little. You can see I'm still going to get a hardness, but it's not going to be as aggressive as 100%. And if you are like, well, I kind of chopped off part of his ear or his head, just hit X. X will toggle the foreground and background swatches and put black in the foreground, and then you can just change it. So we are not erasing, we are just editing the layer mask that came free with the fill layer. Now I'm going to pick a different color for the bottom. So I'm going to go Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color, and I'm going to call it Background 2. And let's see, maybe just a different kind of blue. I'm going to select this layer mask here, Command I to invert, and then I'm going to go in and edit that out. Because the background in this case is very not exciting. I'm leaving the layer blending mode of the layer at normal because I don't want to see any of the information below. Just couch. In one of our videos from last week, you saw how to make swatches from an image. So if you wanted to go with these colors, you could very simple grab the eye, click, oops, make sure you're on the right layer, eye, click, and then with that in the foreground, you could add it to swatches. Call it Mick 1. Click the red on the lips. Add to swatches. Mick 2. Get that kind of weird pink. Mick 3. That green. Mick 4. Then I think this purple, which is pretty fabulous. Mick 5. Oop, 5. 5. There we go. So if you look in your swatches, you'll see that the last 5 are the ones that you just sampled from your inspiration. And if you want to use those colors, double click on that fill layer, go over to one of your layers, one of your swatches, and then you can pick the other guy, and there you go. And you can edit these masks with the brush if you see that you left a little bit out.
You kind of chopped his head.
Chopped it at his head here?
Yeah. It looked like
Wow, I did. I gave him quite the haircut. So let's see if we can go back to the layer mask, and that's better.
So much better.
That looks so much more normal. There we go.
a Frankenstein skull.
I've always thought his forehead was just a little too big, so let's go back in there. And it doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to add other colors over it. So I'm just going to shoot. And leave a little bit. Okay. I think we could probably do a little bit, make it a little more forgiving. It's hard to tell where the couch ends and his puppy face begins. Okay. So then we're going to layer, new fill layer, solid color, and let's call it his puppy fur. And I'm going to select this kind of mustard from the swatches that I made from Mick Jagger. Select the layer mask, Command I, with the brush, again, white and black as your foreground and background. And I'm just going to start coloring over. Now, this really does a number on any of the detail below it, right? Because the layer is 100%, you can't see any of the photographic detail below it. So this is when I change my layer blending mode. So I go up here to normal. This first set here will darken. The second lightens. The third set does different lighting modes. Right. And the fourth is kind of your special effects. And then the fifth affect the color. So in this case, I'm just going to try multiply because I think that looks pretty good. And you can see where I've kind of colored outside the lines. I'm not too terribly worried about it, right? Because I think he's okay. He's a little bit punk rock. And if you look at the one of Mick Jagger, that's definitely punk rock. I'm going to leave some of his saucy little, like his little dots there for another layer. Layer, new fill layer, solid color. Column is dots. Then let's select, ooh, this green is great. Layer mask, Command I. If you're not sure what layer blending mode you want to use, select the layer and then with the Move tool selected, Shift plus or minus to cycle through. Multiply looks pretty good. So he's kind of looking punk rock. So let's look back at our Mick Jagger. In this case, we don't have a mouth or much eyes to really play with, but if we wanted to take this green and be a little funkier with it, we absolutely could. We could just kind of go across the face a little more aggressively. If you want to start adding shapes, like some of these shapes in the background, here's how you can try it. If you go to the vector tools, you have the rectangle tool, polygon, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, line, and then you have the custom shape. Let's work with the rounded rectangle tool for now. I'm going to make just a rectangle. Up in the top, in the option bar, you'll see that I can change the stroke. I can make it much greater. It has no fill right now. I can give it a fill. I can give it a dot if I want to. And then what I need to do is change the layer blending mode of that. And this is how you can start to add different shapes. The shapes that are here are kind of geometric, but if you go to the custom shape tool, select that, go up into the option bar, you'll see that there are a lot more options for shapes. If these are not all loaded, you can go to this little pull down gear and say, I think it's all, and it'll say, do you want to replace the current shapes with all the shapes from all? And you can say, okay. And then it gives you just, the first set will just have like maybe 20 shapes, and then this will give you all. Right. We will also go through, and I don't know if we'll have time for this exercise, but as the semester goes on, how to make our own custom shapes, which you can find some pretty cool stuff in here, like say this tree. Not sure how that applies in any way to what's going on, but don't be afraid to put a tree or a bird on it, okay? So this is how you can play around with those. And these will appear as shapes, rounded rectangle. If you want to make a more kind of irregular shape, we'll go through that in another video. I would say for now, keep the vector shapes to a minimum and really focus on defining the face and experimenting with overlapping and lines. At the very top, make a new blank layer, call it drawing, and with the pencil, which is located under the brush, you can go in, let's see, normal, oh, I have it set at pink, no wonder. Let's get maybe green. I like going in and adding a little bit of cross hatching. Then you can change the color of the brush. Okay. And that is all on a drawing layer, just using the pencil. You can use different colors. You can change the blending mode. You can also, if you're like, well, that's kind of aggressive, I just want to take it back a little, you can change the opacity. So there's lots of options right now. I would say just get working on that. If you would like to experiment with shapes, you can experiment with these shapes. And yeah, I might take this down to soft light, and then also we can play with where it is in the layer blend. I'm sorry, in the layer stack. I think what's really making me nuts about this shape, if I double click right here to change it, is the dots. And I've got to figure out how to get rid of that by selecting the vector shape and going to the stroke and just getting rid of it entirely. Because that's a lot easier to live with right, automatically, right off the bat. You want it, oops. rectangle. Okay, so that is how to get a good start on all of this. Respect the layers, experiment, and remember, it doesn't have to look like anything photographic. You can really experiment with different colors and different types of brushes and different types of brush effects. Make your own color palettes. All right? Okay, let's get to it.